Yo, welcome back to Spangled Gamblers. I'm your host, King Dog. This is your OG political betting podcast. This is one for all of the boys who are like super stiff for this election coming up in November. We're going to talk about these Times Siena polls that just came out. We're going to talk about some early voting data, which there's only a little bit of. Like, we're really going to try and get in front of this giant, massive boulder of cash if you're smart, or maybe cuckening if you're not. And who do I have here but Savage? Where are you at?
In the basement, like Joe Biden. What's going on, everybody?
Seems to be a place to wage a winning campaign from lately, though. Pratik, where are you at?
I am in the Washington area.
Not in a basement? It seems very poorly lit where you are right now.
No, not a basement, but yeah, I could use better lighting.
Oh, you're in a different room, man. I'm used to seeing that. I'm always admiring the ceiling behind you and the wall behind you.
That dish cabinet with fine china that's always clanking around in an opportune time.
Definitely talked about it off pod before.
Wait, but one of our national pastimes besides democracy in America is Modelo in America. It's Modelo time, fellas. Why am I the only one who has one?
I didn't know I was supposed to be opening the Miller Lights. I got it within arm's reach.
I think I've actually tweeted that anyone who tweets a Miller Lite at me will get blocked and reported. So this would be a lot. But why don't you pop that open and see what happens?
Listen, South side of Chicago, we drink Miller Lite. That's it.
What do those North Side guys drink?
Bud Light, probably.
Bunch of jokers. So the history of this podcast is that all of us have man crushes on iSavage because look at his basement. And again, if you're listening to this podcast, you're not doing it right. Look at those sleeve tats and his awesome accent. And also he makes a ton of money betting on politics. And he's been chirping me like super hard. Like, why don't you just tell people what you're chirping me about and like why you're like 2 weeks ahead of me betting on this election right now? And we can tell you if you're an idiot or if like we're way behind you and we should just kill ourselves.
No, right. So, I think that anybody who has done any kind of political gambling and has done it for a while now has just come across people who they don't trust polls anymore, right? So, Biden can have just steady poll in his favor for every state, doesn't waver, doesn't move too much after, the convention. And so what I'm trying to look at now is obviously things that can give us confidence in the outcome right now or to bet, even kind of outside of polling data, because, there's a lot out there that's, if you never look at a poll through this, there's still a lot out there that's showing that, Biden's in a good position right now.
Yeah. Like, listen, like we're best friends with Zoltar and he's like a no polls person. We're best friends with our own family members who probably don't post trust polls quite so much. Like, what is the evidence that Trump is going to win this election? The only evidence that I've seen is that you can't trust evidence. That seems to be the message that I'm getting. But I don't know if that's like a bettable insight.
I mean, boat parades, I guess. But other than that, I mean, I just haven't seen a good data point for Trump in months, really. I mean, you got a couple of polls that show he's within 3 in a couple of states that are like really must win, but that would have to be like the one poll out of 10 that's right, for those to even be off by, by more than 3. So, again, I mean, for everything we know about polling, it's gotten better since 2016. They've corrected, what they saw were some of the flaws in the state polls that were off. Mainly the weighting by education for basically white men has been a lot more factored into the polling data that wasn't there in 2016. But, for us to not trust polls at this point is not even just to say polls are still bad, but Biden is still so much more ahead than Hillary was at this point. It's like somehow they have gotten worse.
But I'll construct the counter argument, though, because it seems like one of the reasons why people are so silly and emotional and I guess violent now about their political views is that it's like it seems like we're litigating kind of cultural issues. Like we're basically litigating the metaphorical equivalent of like guns and abortion over every single thing conceivable, like whether or not to wear a mask in a pandemic. And I don't know that like polls are necessarily well equipped to help people express the way that they're feeling about that. Like, maybe there's a little bit of water in that jar, but again, like I'm really struggling to grasp for the bettable insight here. mean, I don't know if I'm tickling you or not, or if
Yeah,
I'm about to
yeah,
get punched
no,
in the
yeah,
face.
no. So it's like, I mean, obviously, I think everybody is still got some trepidation. Like, man, what if it happens again, right? Especially those of us who are, trying to bet on a Biden win. But so what I've been, the other evidence out there that I've been looking at is things that can't be fudged as much or be flawed as polling might be. Things like, how many Democrats versus Republicans have registered to vote. And like I say, the states that the states that are going to count: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina, and when you've got a new voter registration edge in each of those states that are not just
Not Pennsylvania though.
well, so that was the thing with that Pennsylvania data that came out is I don't want to turn into somebody who's one of these unskew the poll type people, but there is still a net gain in new registered voters in Pennsylvania. And under the hood on that of saying that they haven't gained that many, what's been reported is that it looks like Democrats have lost voters because the Democrat heavy districts have purged their rolls more than Republican districts have. So if Republican districts were purging their voters at the rate the Democrats were, they would look in a lot worse shape than they are right now. At least that's what one.
That sort of makes sense that, like, big giant corrupt big city machines would maybe have a little more pressure on them to be custodians and sweep away all those people who died in like 1985 or something.
Yeah, or moved away or switched their registration. I'm
still registered in Pennsylvania, I think.
Oh, that ballot's coming, man.
Yeah, someone's. I'll tell you what, that person's not voting for Trump, but I don't want to make this a conspiracy theory podcast like some of the ones we've had before.
Yeah.
On the theme of arguments of why Trump would win, I mean, do you want me to read a couple that we got in the mailbag and we can
yeah, fire away.
Okay, so one line is basically on the riots. This is from Chris McAuliffe. It's no secret that chaos, real or perceived, and uncertainty have a strong history of strengthening the right wing in this country. So I think, in fact, I think that would not be limited only to the riots. I think the argument basically would be you have rioting plus chaos having to do with coronavirus, where a lot of people don't know if it's actually real or not, combined with economic volatility, combined, like you said, Alex, with the cultural, political issues. So that would be one argument here.
No, all I was going to say is that, I mean, definitely when it was about 3 weeks ago and things were looking, really ugly on TV, when it was just, riot after riot scene in the states we want to, that we want to focus on a lot, Wisconsin, Minnesota. And I think that was going to, so I was nervous. I'm like, oh man, this, might really make a difference. But again,
that's how Trump wins.
Right. Well, and that's where, and if you trust polls or not, if you don't, you say, I don't care what the polls say, this is changing people's minds. If you do trust the polls, we've had polling cycle after polling cycle in those places that show it's not changing people's minds there. So, we would, that's where I think that, what I always talk about a lot is this echo chamber that people get into of everybody I hear from is saying that this is going to make a difference. But are they talking to enough people?
Here's where it is, though.
Yeah.
Here's what it is. If you look at polls, if you go back to June, maybe I got the wrong day. Maybe it's July. It's whenever George Floyd got murdered on camera. Not a great day. But if you go back to that, this shows up in like the Law and Order and Black Lives Matter name ID stuff, where BLM was like a 75-25 favorable with generic Joe America anywhere in the country. That was what, now it's more of like a 50-50 thing. Like people are much less sympathetic to the Black Lives Matter movement, and law and order and crime and violence is ticked up to be like a top tier issue, but it doesn't seem to be changing the way people feel about who they're going to vote for. Like, it seems like when has anyone known more about two candidates than Donald Trump and Joe Biden? Like, it just doesn't seem to matter at that level. It seems to matter at a lower level.
Right. Yeah. And again, that's where you try to look for other evidence of did this have the hold that it was going to? There really could be this undercurrent of Wisconsin voters that are very affected by it, that aren't showing up in polls, but you would just, you would expect to see, a flip to Trump at some point if it was really going to be this election changing issue. And again, I could see how people would feel that way. I was worried about it happening, but it hasn't shown up in, at least polling evidence yet.
I could read another one. This one would be on the economy from Rahul. He wrote, "Some good news for Trump. The economy added 1.4 million jobs in August. Unemployment fell to 8.4%, below 10% for the first time since the pandemic hit us. Expect this to be a major GOP talking point." And I guess to build on that, I mean, I think the argument would be that even though people are kind of weary about Trump's coronavirus handling, I think he's now basically branded himself as the guy who doesn't want to overstate coronavirus, wants to reopen the economy, thinks that we're overdoing it. And I haven't heard a lot of people from the lockdown, shutdown camp really talk about how do you actually weigh the economic considerations at play here. So I think even normally if 8.4% unemployment isn't exactly what you want to be running on as an incumbent, I wonder if public opinion begins to become more suspicious of COVID and the lockdown. Do economic considerations tilt toward Trump at the last minute?
Yeah, no, I was interested to see that when the Republicans did their response to coronavirus stimulus too, that they explicitly put in money for returning people to schools. So that they seem to think that there's something there. But like again, like iSavage has been saying, it just seems like people are so preloaded with information about this election that I don't really see it mattering so much. I thought, okay, you guys tell me if I'm wrong. I was looking at these Times Siena polls, and the things that were most interesting to me were, and I think traders are freaking out about this. The price of Biden winning in Nevada is down like 7 cents in the last couple of days because no one in Nevada is going to vote. Like that's what the Times Siena poll said, is that like none of us have jobs and we don't really give a shit and we're not going to vote. Like, is that a real thing? And does that mean Trump's going to win? Like, I don't really, like, what? It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, everything I've always known about Nevada is that there's just this huge turnout machine there that has to do with, the culinary union in a lot of different ways. And that has just always been like the secret weapon. So I'm not sure, though, how people not working is going to necessarily make the difference on that, though, because it's a get out the vote machine, right? And they're a big vote by mail state. So I mean, maybe just people not being in regular contact with each other and not having those, that opportunity. But when I saw a Biden +4 in Nevada, Clinton wasn't getting polls like that in 2016. She had a couple that were decent, but there were ties. There was Trump up, and the Real Clear Politics average was actually Trump by almost a point the day before the election. So
yeah,
Biden by 4 looked pretty decent to me.
I mean, sometimes I sort of like role play my way through this. It's like, okay, I'm an unemployed culinary worker or blackjack dealer or something like that. I'm still probably, well, I guess I have to look at the color. Like I would think in Nevada, it's a state where frankly, like race and color of skin is probably a pretty clear delineator. But, like who are the people who, if you think about the people who maintain vacation homes and have rental properties and stuff like that, like who are they going to vote for? I mean, I guess I could see those people voting for Trump, but it just seems weird to me after all the L's that the Republicans have taken in Nevada in the last couple of years that suddenly they would like Trump. Trump has been the worst thing that's happened to the Republican Party in Nevada. Why would that change right now? It defies common sense to me.
I mean, I've been high on Nevada for a long time. I think that, it just seems that it's gone in, like you said, Democrats' favor. You lose a governorship, you lose the presidential race, you lose a senator, you lose congressional seat. It's something would have had to go real pro-Trump there for him to do well. And I just don't see this being a net plus for him at all.
Yeah, right. Like, prove me wrong. Like, it defies common sense to me that suddenly Trump would turn everything around, and it just doesn't pass the sniff test to me.
So, I mean, I think if we're all in agreement, basically, that Biden is a favorite here, I guess the question is how much of a favorite? Like, where are you guys on the margin markets, on how many, what are we actually considering to be a swing state? What does sort of the outer boundary look like of a Biden win?
I'm definitely, I mean, this is my thing. I am not strong very much, except for, I'm pretty confident he's going to get everything that Hillary got and then get back Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Arizona,
That's
I
bold.
think I think Arizona is really going Biden's way. I am not somebody who bets heavy on Florida. I don't, I just think Republicans do too well there. They've got a very good turnout formula that works really well for them. And, I'm looking at Biden being able to win without Florida. He's looking okay there, but a lot of this weekend, I guess this goes back to the Nevada conversation, is, the big panic this week is him not looking great with Latino voters right now. And that could make the difference in Nevada, Arizona, and Florida if it's really that big of a panic button to press.
So, I mean, we got a lot of mail basically inquiring about Texas and Georgia. I think there is some debate there on, are these genuine swing states, or will Trump be able to pull it out? I mean, where are you on that duo?
Georgia, I love. I think that goes blue quicker than Texas does. I just think that there is this is another one of the things, and if we transition to some of the other stuff I was talking about in terms of voter registration in Georgia has just been tens of thousands of new voters a month since 2016, skew younger, skew minority, and how close that Abrams came in 2018. I think that McBath flipping Georgia 6 where Ossoff could not. I think that was a big difference about her being an African-American woman. So I think that Kamala Harris is going to, beef up some of the turnout there. And how many voters turned out in the primary, out voting Republicans in the is my deal in the markets right now.
I mean, I always hear that with skepticism. And like, certainly I don't feel especially confident that, Donald Trump's Republican Party is going to be able to hold on to, anything indefinitely. But I feel like more often than not, new registrants will always skew Democratic. Like, more often than not, first time voters will skew Democratic. Like the pattern of the Democratic Party is it has more voters who participate less frequently. So like all of that stuff sounds kind of normal to me. It doesn't, like, that by itself doesn't freak me out. But I don't talk to a lot of Republican operatives on the ground in these states who feel like they have especially easy jobs this cycle. Like, they all seem like they're like, they're at the Alamo and, they could wake up and it could be, 1984 Walter Mondale where, just a total wipeout. So it seems like the cat's out of the bag on this. But I feel like there's a lot of, premature touchdown dances going on from big Democratic cheerleaders right now.
Yeah, we actually got a mailbag item on that Mondale point. This is from Sanjay, who wrote, Texas and Georgia flipping would be as Mondale-like as we can reasonably see in the current environment. It's a partisanship's a hell of a drug thesis. I think basically between COVID and George Floyd, there's been so much focus on Trump's worst and loudest tendencies that I don't know if people have really focused as much on Biden and his potential weaknesses. I don't think that Trump is going to fully reverse this. I'm net long on Biden, but I'm not sure these current leads are going to hold completely. I'm sitting on underwater Trump Texas and Trump Georgia shares, and I'm not selling out of those.
I'm not as big on Texas as I am on Georgia. I think that some other people would disagree. Some other people would say that it's going blue faster. I think just really based on demographics, they're looking at it that way. But I still think that, and I've said it before on here, I just think that, Republican is the way that people vote almost reflexively in Texas sometimes. And, I think that it looked a little bit better midsummer for Biden, unfortunately, because there were, COVID was hitting Texas so bad that I think it had the potential to really make people rethink maybe their some of their trust in Trump. As things have improved, I don't know. I'm not sure what, how fluid people's opinions can be on that. But, that's where I'm a little bit higher on. I mean, I've got yes on Biden in Texas as well, just not as much.
I mean, the thing that jumped out to me in the Times Siena poll was, first of all, I wasn't completely astonished that Trump wasn't underwater in the suburbs of Minneapolis and Wisconsin. I figured that he'd be getting blown out. And then, like, I sat for another minute and I thought, and I was like, what the fuck world am I living in where, like, a Republican being even in the suburbs with a Democrat is, like, exciting news for Republicans? So I mean, I like a state like Texas, I don't know how you can hold a state like that in the short term, the midterm, or the long term if you can't win by noticeable margins in the suburbs. So, as long as college educated white people aren't voting for you, it's only a matter of time. I have no money in Texas or Georgia. And maybe that's because I'm like a hacky Republican at heart who doesn't want to admit we're going to lose them. But
yeah, I'd be curious if you agree, but I think that Texas trading at 27% is way too low. I'm happy to buy Biden at that price, but I think that even if you're more of Alex's view that Texas is a bit too far of a reach, I mean, it seems to me that you can buy relatively cheap here in the margin market. So if you believe that Texas might be in play, it seems to me that buying Democrats to win by 210 plus electoral votes, you can get 210 to 279 at 9%, and you can get 280 plus at 7%. I mean, I think if you think that Trump or Biden winning Texas,
I own those, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Biden is able to win Texas, I mean, that's obviously correlated with him doing well in other big states. And I think winning by a 210 plus margin becomes a very real possibility there. So I'm happy to buy 7-cent shares in 280 plus and 9 in 210 to 270.
Yeah, I mean, I own everything from 150 up. I own 150 to 280 plus. So I'm 100% expecting this to not be a close election. So, cut that out. Maybe I'll be wrong, but right now, that's where I am.
I think I'm playing a little bit closer, and I think that only because I just get very nervous about Florida. I don't know what it is, but that's not in like my. That's not.
I know what it is.
Yeah,
you're a Democrat. That's why you're nervous about Florida.
It's definitely that, but it's also. I mean, in 2018, for the whole country to shift left, almost not the whole country, but you know what I mean. In a lot of places, what we're looking at shifted left, and it did not happen in Florida, and the polls were wrong in Florida. So. That's where, those two things in combination, what happened in 2018 and what polls say right now, yeah.
But in Florida, like this is, I'm going to be like, one of these days people will say, they say the I Savage always sell at 90 rule. They're going to say like the King Dog, like play the man, not the numbers rule. If you look at those elections in Florida, first of all, Bill Nelson, the senator that got beat, that might've been in 2000, that was in 2018. Bill Nelson, like people had known for ages, was one of the biggest zeros in the Senate. And the fact that he was still a senator was astonishing. He was like the opposite of a Claire McCaskill, who was like such a tenacious Democrat in a state that was not favorable to Democrats. Bill Nelson was just like, how the fuck is this guy still in office? This is insane. So there's that. And like, let's be honest here. Don't cancel me, world. But like Andrew Gillum was not the right candidate to win that gubernatorial race. Like someone else could have, like Ron DeSantis.
So that's the thing, though. I don't think he was
zero.
I don't think he was though either. I mean, a lot of what we know about Gillum now, that's not really what we knew back then. I mean, he was, he had a surprise win in a primary, young, decent looking guy, and maybe it was because he was a mayor of a city, and that turned some people outside of cities off. But again.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just picked the wrong horses there.
I'm with Alex on Florida. I mean, in the interest of full disclosure, I lost money on the Bill Nelson race. I thought he would win. But that said, I mean, I think that there are a couple things. I mean, Rick Scott was also an unusual politician just simply by virtue of how much money of his own he could put into that race.
Yeah.
And if you believe the Axios report. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you look at the fact that, I mean, the Axios report now is that the Trump campaign is already bankrupt, which I think is entirely believable. If Florida, to a large extent, is simply a money game, I think Biden has an advantage there. I also think, for what it's worth, that I actually think Ron DeSantis is a unusually talented Republican politician. I think that that's proven or being proven by how well he's performing in terms of his polling as governor. So I'm inclined to read 2018 as more of an anomaly. I think that the polling is probably right. I think Biden has an advantage, and I think that he's on track for a comfortable.
You make a good point about Ron DeSantis, but I don't like. To me, in 2018, there was no evidence that Ron DeSantis was anything other than like a Yahoo congressman who like licked Trump's boots enough to get an endorsement. Now, oftentimes, being a psychopath is early in your career is evidence that you're actually an extremely astute politician, because it seems like that's, you know, the only way to get into the gang is to like commit the crime or something like that. So I think you are right about that. But like, I didn't, you tell me I'm wrong. I thought in 2018, Ron DeSantis just presented himself like a hack. I mean, did you feel there was any evidence that he was a talented person who could win a close race?
Yeah, there were a couple. I mean, one was that I actually had known about Ron DeSantis for a long time. We have some mutual friends. So that was one factor. But
Or any of them hot babes?
Anyway, no, but look, I mean, the other factors
Don't tell Queen
were,
Dog.
I think he very much played the school voucher card astutely, and if you look at the way he transitioned from the primary to the general, I think that showed acumen. The other thing on Gillum was that I was betting on Gillum right up until the end, where I switched my position, and the reason was that I don't know if you guys recall, but there was that debate where Gillum basically said something to the effect of, "I'm not saying you're a racist, but all the racists think you're one of them," or something to that effect. And the media, of course,
I've heard that a lot lately.
Yeah, I mean, the media cheered him on, but if you're trying to win over suburban whites, I mean, that's like not the message that they want to hear. So anyway, I think that Biden is a stronger candidate than the 2018 candidates who lost, and I think that Biden also just has, as a candidate, much more of an advantage than Hillary ever did in Florida.
Good.
It's definitely worth bringing up that, you know, today talking about Bloomberg, you know, injecting $100 million just in Florida. I think that lets Biden spend money elsewhere, because he's almost got he's got Bloomberg covering in Florida in a lot of different ways. So I think that can make a big difference. Whether it makes how much of a favor it gives Biden right now, it does scramble some probably what some people thought their plans were.
So I was stepping on some people's toes when I say this, but I think the old phrase in politics was, as California goes, so goes the nation. I think as Florida goes, so goes the nation now. That seems like the place where it happens. On the
margin point, Aaron Creeder wrote in, and he had an interesting observation.
He's been chirping us a lot lately.
Yeah, he wrote, so he's talking about the 280 plus markets, and he wrote, in active shares, GOP 280 plus is crushing it. Says a lot about predicted traders and long shot GOP bias.
Wait, what's that for? 80 plus win electoral?
280 plus, yeah, the electoral.
Oh, like a blowout Republican win?
Exactly, yeah. But then he observes the Democratic equivalent of 280 plus has less shares. And Aaron thinks that it's basically because, he writes here, Democratic traders, like in 2016, aren't as interested in long shots. So I don't know if Aaron's correct here, but he's basically arguing that Republican money in the markets is more likely to believe in a blowout election than Democrats are. So I don't know if you guys agree, but
or it could be people hedging their maxes in the other direction.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think the 280 plus market for the Democrats is underpriced right now.
Yeah, I bought it too high. I bought it at 10. So let's get that price up. Let's pump it.
I'm not in on that yet, but I'm probably gonna take a look at it today. I'm not necessarily looking at a blowout, but it's in the cards. Let's put it that way. But you make a really good point, I think, Pratik, about I never thought about it this way. Is there a psychological profile of who's more likely to go for long shots versus just kind of steady the course and look for conventional wisdom money, I guess, or trying to find the right balance in between? Because, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'll try to put some money on long shots sometimes, but more than likely, I'm looking for things that are, about 40, 50, 60 that I think are going to, have some upside to it. I don't do a whole lot of like, how can I get 10 times my money? Not in elections, at least, maybe back when tweeting was around, but that's a good thing to think about.
It's so funny that in this game you like wind up like a real investor on Wall Street is going to have some highly specialized niche that they're just better than the market in. And you find yourself in the same position here where you're like, I'm like really good at, this like executive order markets between 60 and 70 cents, or, legislative branch markets between, you just turn into that guy. Pratik, I think that the point you're making is one of those interesting, like very small points that actually says a lot about the character of politics, because you and I have both worked for the Republican Party for meaningful periods of our lives. And like, I remember it being a party of winners, it was like, Ronald Reagan and Jack Kemp and, being whatever that like grandiose vision of entrepreneurs and commerce and strength. It is a party of losers now, which is why all the smart people are betting their money in smart places and they're not betting on Republicans. And all the dumb people are betting their dumb money in dumb places. And they probably are. I mean, it's just like, we're not a party that attracts people who are smart and successful right now. And I think that that's just one of many examples to illustrate that.
Oh, I completely agree. And I mean, I was going to bring up too, like the popular vote margin. I also think the blowout Democratic markets here are underpriced too. And I think one of the reasons, as you say, is that I think there's a lot of thinking that, well, if the polls are showing Biden up 7, 8, or 9 or whatever, that the actual margin will be narrow. But I think what they're not taking into account is the fact, and Isavich made the point earlier, a lot of money will have to be spent on ground game and so forth. If you just look at the talent and the quality of people who are involved with the Biden camp or the campaign, the donors, the fundraisers, people in the media, I think if you were looking at like the 2000 election or the 2004 election, I mean, you could basically kind of bet with the assumption that the political talent on the Bush campaign was roughly comparable to what Kerry had or what Al Gore had. I mean, I don't think you can make that assumption today in 2020. I think that whatever the polls say, I think you have to assume that the Biden campaign and the Democratic infrastructure writ large just has much more talented people, like you say, the winners in society basically behind them. So I'm inclined to think Biden's actually going to outperform expectations a little bit for that reason.
But you're missing one thing. Because the quality of the political talent at the top of the ticket, I think, is better on Trump's side. I mean, I don't think he's going to win, but I think that, like, not to be a cliche, but which one's selling out stadiums and which one's, like, if he doesn't crap his pants on live TV, people are like, he did a good job.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, man, that's Kiss versus, I don't know. There's some good analogy there about some band that's good that doesn't fill up stadiums that would probably sell more albums too. You know what I'm saying? Like
right.
Trump is Kiss, and you got a niche, but
politics is selling to stupid people.
Oh, I mean, for sure. And I think what's funny is you guys just got done bashing your side, and I'll bash my side a little bit, or even posit a.
Bro, we're all on the same
here
side.
Is the one thing I think that Trump campaign is doing that is going to make a difference is looking a little bit more on how to flood the zone in the social media and digital space versus I think Biden's still maybe over reliant on TV ads. And I think that if Trump has any kind of chance whatsoever, I think what his success would have shown is making these counties that go 75, 80 Republican, getting turnout in those counties to go way, way up because they've somehow turned that into like a cultural event that we're all going to vote on this day. We didn't vote in 2016. We didn't vote in 2018, but we're voting this time because I'm hit on Facebook every day with ads. I'm hit on every time I go on YouTube, whatever it might be. So I think that Biden's catching up there, but Trump has been in that zone for, since the day he got inaugurated. So, that's something that does make me, wonder if they are going to kind of supercharge turnout. I don't know.
It's fascinating too, because you're hitting on another one of those like itty bitty things that I think says a lot. So I looked at the Times Siena polls, and one of the more interesting things was like Republicans will not vote by mail if you believe those polls. I mean, it's insane. It's like Minnesota. 12% said they'd vote by mail versus 80 on the day. Like Wisconsin, 15 versus 73. Like maybe it's just a resistance to any type of cultural or any type of political change as being suspicious, or maybe it's what you're talking about with Trump just like being in their ear so hard.
So that's where there's, the places where it used to be closer. Like I'm looking at data where Florida, with Democrats having a huge edge right now in requests, it used to be a lot closer. That data gets in there of I think the early votes that you're seeing that are Democrat heavy now. If you were to dig into it, it probably would be not as representative of even where black voters are going to fit into the final count.
Are you buying this red Mirage thing? Like this, that Republicans are going to have a huge lead on the election day, and then the mail-in ballots are just going to drag it down.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at where, because I've dug into, and I would recommend anybody else who is interested in this to do it. If you look at when states can even start processing their ballots, there's such a huge range of when that can happen. And process means you can open it up, you can verify that it's the person who signed it and matched the signature. You just don't tally the vote yet, but everything is ready to go. Some states can start doing that weeks in advance, and that's why we'll know Florida's results basically, the night in Florida. As of right now, New York, New York, Pennsylvania, they can't start even processing them until election day. So there really is going to be a huge rolling count.
Where do you get that? Do you get that from like the green pages, or you go to the Secretary of State's website?
You want to tell the boys about this, or you want to keep it a secret?
I got to keep some stuff proprietary, but it's out there.
That's behind our paywall.
It's out there.
It's out there.
Yeah. It's out there though. There's a list of states of who does it when.
So are you getting involved in the when will the election be called market?
I am. Yeah. I'm somebody who I don't think the first 2 days is going to be. I don't think it's going to be called the first 2 days, and one of the reasons is the rules say it has to be called by CNN and Fox News, right? And so I do not think that if Trump is railing against we need to count every vote before we call everything, or we can't. They're going to be getting a totally different. We know who they take their lead from a lot of times, right? And I don't think that they're going to officially call the election until it is definitive. And I think that if there's still a quarter of the votes to count in Michigan, or half the votes still count in Michigan, no, I don't think Fox News is going to call it on day 2. That's my opinion right now.
Well, we've been hearing that from some of the boys. I'm like sort of nervously not putting my capital to work in this market yet, but I kind of want to go long chaos here and go no for the first couple of days.
I think the very outer market, I'm forgetting what the date is, but it's trading in the high 80s. This is, I guess, like the nightmare scenario where it just takes a long time. I think that seems to be pushing it, but what do you think?
If it gets to be that bad, I don't even know what amount of money would make that worth it to me, because I think that would just be such a chaotic environment in the country, to be honest. But
so it's after December 14th right now, trading at 11%.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that we're going to have a definitive answer. I think that it's going to be clear, and I think people are going to talk about it being, pretty predictable. But I think people are also going to be very cautious about. There's going to be a difference between people saying if trends continue this way, it looks like Biden has it, and we are officially calling it for Biden or Trump. But.
So I guess, I mean, if you buy the kind of iSavage thinking here, maybe, and tell me if I'm wrong, but maybe the play here is to buy like November 8th or 9th for 5 cents, 6 or 7 maybe for 7 cents, something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I've definitely got no on day 1 and day 2 right now. A mix of more than one and the other, and I think that actually that's probably once we get past midnight on November 3rd, I think that everything else is just going to go wild, because it's going to be possible anywhere. So I think all those have a lot of upside to them for sure.
We got to have you on this podcast more. Pays for itself. What's your fee? What's the kickback? Like 10% of iSavage's picks have to be returned to him. What? Let me ask a question out of the book to you, Savage, before we start to say goodnight on this one. I'm really, really, really not happy about how few markets there are on Predict It. And there are a number of reasons for them. One of which is that elections aren't really what I do the best. So I would like to have more markets that are things that I do the best. But the other is there's just not enough going on. Are you like willing to entertain the idea of going on some of these crypto exchanges soon and like doing like Augur or like Polymarket or like thinking outside the box? Because like I don't know if I can live my life this way, you know? Like I don't know if I can live my life, you know, only betting on elections.
So like my snap answer is no, because I don't know crypto at all, and I'm not trying to learn. I'm not trying to make two calculations at once versus how right do I need to be to make money on this, and how much is this, you know, as my friend Jane K calls it, moon money. How much is this going to be worth today versus tomorrow? So just based off that, I'm not entertaining it. I love Predict It. I mean, I really love the platform, the functionality of it, the community. I am also dismayed in the reduction of markets. I am going to hate next year if we have a new president and there's not cabinet markets and you know what I mean? Like that would be a killer to me. So that could, you know, really make a difference. So
I'm like wailing in the street that we can't do mention markets during the debates. Like,
yeah, I mean,
why live?
Yeah, I mean, those were always just more like fun for me. Like, you know, not like you. I know that was your. I mean, I would throw $30-$50 at something to see, you know, one way or the other. But they were just more fun. They made it, you know, they made it a little bit more fun to watch the debates for sure, or the State of the Union.
Understatement.
Yeah. But no, I wasn't trying to come up too hard on those.
Yeah, no, that was my game. BJ, you got anything else?
No.
Oh, you know what? We forgot one thing. iSavage. I've been getting into a lot of Twitter beefs. I got into one. I baited you into a Twitter beef this weekend. So we need to settle it like right now. In case the world doesn't know, you are in a basement on the south side of Chicago. But Kanye West, we got an argument over what the definitive Kanye West album is. So why don't you make your case right now for why you've got the drop on me on whatever album that's the incorrect answer is? Like, let's hear it, explain it to the world, and then we can say goodbye.
The best Kanye West album is the debut, College Dropout. It's a classic. Lots of great hits on it, but you know, just front to back, a great album. You can listen to it without pressing skip. Third best album is Graduation. It's probably his most fun album, party album, but it's got some really good songs on it as well. And Homecoming is, you know, if you're from Chicago, that's your song. And then tied for fourth is every other album, because nothing else is even
I think
really worth.
that's unfair to some of the other albums, but I'm a Graduation guy. I think that devoting an entire album to being rich and famous is awesome, and now I'm just gonna like blow it out with number one hits about how awesome it is, and then sneak on a couple sad love songs about my hometown. That's living good. Graduation, number one, take it to the bank. I know you artsy people are gonna tell me that My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is better. You're wrong. I like living. I don't like thinking about living. Graduation, number one.
Graduation is a great album. I didn't say it's bad. It's, you know, it's just it's the third best out of what, 12? That's great.
Yeah. Fuck you and your bronze medal. Pratik, this is your last chance in life to make a definitive statement about Kanye West other than his presence on ballots in this presidential election. Do you want to weigh in?
No.
And there you have it. All right. This has been Star Spangled Gamblers. I'm Keen Dog. I'm your host at Keen Dog SSG. Pratik, you're here. You don't ever spell out your Twitter handle, but if you go to Star Spangled Gamblers, you'll find it. iSavage, love having you in the rotation.
Always
this is your crew. This is your crew. This is your show. If you like it, if you're still listening to it, I think you love it. Let's tell the truth and call a spade a spade. Go visit www.starspangledgamblers.com/support. You can lend your talents to us. You can send us Venmo. You can join Patreon. Or if you've got friends who are alcoholic, psychotic, betting freaks, you can send them our referral code to Predict It. And then everyone gets free money to get started doing this thing that's so awesome, which is called betting on politics. So, Keen Dog, it's been great to see you guys. Good night, team.